Hey 918ers, it is Geekboy, and I am coming to you live from the ultra-secret secure fan cave located in parts unknown right here in the 918. And tonight I am here with a broadcast or video or whatever you want to call it that in my wildest imagination I thought I would never, ever, ever have to make. As a result, I'm going to do everything I can to try to stay positive and to be upbeat. Hey, Mr. Dwayne Robinson is watching right now. Thank you, Dwayne, for joining us in the chat tonight. I'm glad you're here because we're going to be talking about some things I'm going to be anxious to get your opinion on. So anyway, I'm sure as nearly everyone is aware who is even remotely interested, the world premiere of Bond 25, No Time to Die, has been delayed until November. Mid-November for the folks in London, I think late November for us here in the United States, and I have to say that I am stunned. I maybe beyond stunned is what I have to say. But first of all, before we get too deep into that, I do want to clear some things up. I know that some people are going to be curious about. As many of you know, Fanboys 918 was putting on a private screening of No Time to Die on April 11th. We had partnered with the B&B Theaters here in Bixby, and we were encouraging everyone to come in suits or tuxes or gowns and cocktail dresses, depending on your speed. We were making commemorative martini glasses for everyone. It was going to be a full-on red carpet affair. We were going to do everything we can to really play this up. We were going to have some giveaways, and unfortunately, obviously, that's not going to happen now. But if you are one of the people who has purchased tickets for that event, we will be refunding your money in the coming days. I know that the notice of the event site said no refunds, but that was more for the purpose of, someone buying a ticket, we order their glass, then they decide not to come, and we've passed up selling that seat to someone else. These circumstances are completely different, and no one could have ever foreseen anything like this. So everyone will be receiving a full refund. We will begin the process of that this weekend. At first, we'd kind of toyed with the idea of just giving folks their choice of either a refund or a credit for the seat they've already purchased. But when we reschedule it, it just seemed too logistically hard. Plus, you never know if the new date's going to work for everyone. So we just decided to refund everyone's money, scratch the whole thing, and start fresh when we reschedule. Of course, which begs the question, when will that be? And we're still trying to figure that out. We're still in communication with the theater, and the organizing members of Fanboys 918 really haven't had a chance to get together and sit down and talk about this since the news broke. So we hope to do that this weekend, and we will set a tentative date to reschedule soon. So with all that being said, let's talk about this decision by the studio to delay the film, not by just a week or two or a month, but 8 months. Okay, so first of all, let's get this out of the way, and I know Dwayne, since he's in the chat, he'll second this. Release dates are changed all the time, but they're usually for movies that are in production, either due to script problems, injuries, whatnot. The last time I could remember a completed film having its release date changed this much was the J.J. Abrams 2009 Star Trek. I believe it was originally supposed to open in December of 2008, but once the Paramount execs saw the finished product, they decided they had a tentpole summer blockbuster on their hands, and they moved it to May 2009, and that move turned out to be a good one. So the question I want to throw out, one of the questions I'm going to throw out to everyone tonight is, will we have a similar result this time with No Time to Die, or will this delay harm not only the film, but the Bond franchise as well, because the world is a much different place than it was in 2009. So I want everybody kind of let me have your thoughts on this, because I don't really know. I mean, I don't know what this is going to do. And, just to kind of discuss it and go on here, I mean, first off, the reason for the delay would appear to be sound. There are many places in the world that are being affected by the coronavirus. Now, the exact nature of that effect and the seriousness of it is a raging debate. Now, I'm not a medical person, and full disclosure, everything I have learned about how viruses work has been at the hands of Michael Crichton in his books, okay? But if you go on the internet, for every article there is about how the coronavirus is the end of the world, you can find another one stating that it's being overplayed. So, what's the truth? I don't know. At the end of the day, that's a topic for Fox News and CNN to duke it out over. It doesn't really belong on this channel, and it doesn't really matter because the decision's already been made. And I have to say, for someone who has a very basic understanding of how the film industry works, that was no small decision, and it couldn't have been made lightly. I mean, and again, we have a comment from Dwayne here. Okay, so Dwayne says, United Artists had to delay the release. They had too much riding on this release, and that's kind of what was my original. I'm glad you chimed in there. You're kind of jumping ahead of me. That's okay, Dwayne. That's why I wanted you here tonight. That was kind of my thought. I mean, there's been a ton of. Oh, by the way, for those of you that may not know, this is Rizzo, the champ of Chi-Town, the namesake of the Chicago Cubs first baseman. He's normally not in the chats because his mom is usually here to babysit him, but she's traveling tonight. So if you hear him, he may be maybe making some noise more than once tonight. But anyway, to get back on track, there's been a ton of money spent on this film. Not just making the film, but all the marketing geared around opening in little under a month. And now to pull the plug on this, that's no small undertaking. I mean, theaters are booked, talk shows are booked, personal appearances have been planned, and these are all scheduled around working actors and a working director. So this had to have been an agonizing decision, but there are legitimate health concerns to be considered. And, to get back to Dwayne's point, there's a lot riding on this release. And again, things were different since 2009. Excuse me here, folks. Rizzo, you want to say hi to the folks? Come here. You want to say hi to the folks? Can you say hi? He's not going to do it. He's too shy. Anyway, okay, there he said hi to the folks. The movie-going audience has become a global marketplace, China in particular, and James Bond is a global brand. Every person in the world, in every country, knows who James Bond is. Even Rizzo knows who James Bond is. Skyfall did not make over $1 billion worldwide from just the United States and UK, all right? He's really upset about this movie being canceled. So that large gross came from places like China, Korea, Russia, all the places that are taking extreme efforts to contain the spread of the virus. And China's closed its movie theaters until further notice. So I guess, that was kind of what I was thinking is, gosh, which is more expensive, rescheduling it or just diving in and hoping that you make the money? I'm kind of with Dwayne on this. I think that UA has way too much riding on this. They cannot afford to have this movie underperform. As a matter of fact, a franchise like this has to, I would say, they can't even break even. They've got to overperform in order to keep the franchise healthy and to keep the brand viable. And, what else? UA has more than $200 million on the line here. Now, and this is the only film they have on their schedule in 2020. Sorry, folks, I'm doing this kind of on the fly here. Of this scale, if it fails to meet expectations, it could conceivably sink the studio. And that's kind of, Bond has always been the thing that's kind of kept UA's lights on for all intents and purposes. And now, Dwayne, you may not. I'm going to ask you. Are you talking a $200 million production budget, or is that like a $150 million budget with the advertising? Well, hey, Buddy Brown is joining us as well. So, that's again, Dwayne is kind of confirming my thoughts, which is this movie has to overperform. And if you doubt me, look at the way the franchise went into a tailspin after License to Kill underperformed in 1989. I think it was 6 years, a new Bond, and a soft reboot later that produced GoldenEye in 95. So Dwayne is exactly right. They cannot afford to have this movie fail to meet expectations, regardless of the reasons. And this movie it's being built as an event. I mean, even more so than other Bond films. I mean, not only is it the 25th Bond movie, it's Daniel Craig's last film as Bond, and believe it or not, this doesn't make me feel old. He has been Bond for an entire generation of fans. He took over the role in 2005. Okay, Dwayne says the $200 million is production budget only, so that doesn't even count the advertising budget they've spent to promote this thing. Hey, buddy, what's up? So, they're promoting this thing to be something special. I mean, even the way Skyfall was, or maybe even more so. But you can't make Skyfall bank if 3 of your largest markets have their theaters shuttered. So, for me, from my perspective, and I would appear to be aping what Dwayne says here, and that is, from the 30,000 foot level, this would appear to be a good call. It's a responsible humanitarian decision and a responsible business decision. And Dwayne has just sent me a link to some box office information that I'm going to try to post later in the chat once we're done. So, again, from a 30,000 foot level, I think, as disheartening as it is, it's a good call. Or, to play devil's advocate, is it? And the reason I asked that question, and I never would have asked this, but I started doing some research. Yeah, Dwayne just sent a link on a text that's relevant. The reason I say this is because there's some guys I follow online that are huge members of the Bond fan community, and as you guys can imagine, there's as much as there's passionate Star Wars fans and passionate Star Trek fans and Doctor Who fans and Walking Dead fans. The same is true for the Bond community. They've got entire YouTube channels and websites devoted to Bond. And they've raised a few salient points that I think are, kind of worth discussing. But before we do that, I think it's necessary to kind of get my feelings out of the way on this matter. So yesterday I was at lunch, and I had just finished scripting the notes for what was to be the cold open for tonight's original broadcast. We were going to start a Bond retrospective, and this one was going to be about the character's origins and Ian Fleming, which, by the way, we're going to air all this content later. We're not going to get rid of it, but we're just going to do it in a more timely manner with the film, which kind of dovetails into something I'm going to talk about here in a minute. But anyway, I had just hit save, and I was ready to dive into my lunch when I received a Facebook message from our good friend, Mr. Robert Folks, who has been a great supporter of us. And his message said, hey, I guess the screening's been postponed or something like that, And he had attached an article with a headline about the release date change because of the coronavirus. Hey, Jason Barker, how you doing? Glad you're here in the chat tonight. And once again, Rizzo is really pissed about this movie being postponed. So I took a look at it, and of course I checked the source. It was Empire Magazine, which is a very legitimate magazine, but it's also British, so I kind of held out some hope. I'm like, hey, that's British, Then I saw another story from the Hollywood Reporter, and I know, first of all, I know there's a lot of people that rail against these sort of access media outlets a lot, but when it comes to things like this, they are always spot on, and it essentially confirmed the Empire article that the film is being pushed back 8 months. Now, for the founding members of Fanboys 918, we all have our likes and our loves. Some of us like Star Trek, but we love The Walking Dead. Some of us like Doctor Who, but we love Star Wars. But Bond seems to be one of those franchises that we all kind of love equally. We all love Bond, and so we were all beyond disappointed. Sounds like the title of a failed Bond movie, Beyond Disappointed. So, and before I go any further, and at the risk of sounding self-absorbed or out of touch, no one at Fanboys 918 supports anyone putting their health or their peace of mind at risk for a movie, okay? I mean, we would never support that any more than we would support a stuntman taking an unnecessary risk just for a shot. But we are still human, and we were still excited about this film. And my excitement was growing, okay? Jason Barker says, when are they going to have all the alive previous 007s in a flick? This needs to happen. Yeah, I just, I agree with that. And I just want this film, because, as Bond fans, as a Bond fan, we were all disappointed. We were disappointed for our followers that we were putting this event on for. We were disappointed that we didn't get to meet some of you folks that, we usually just correspond with by Facebook. I mean, we were hoping that you guys would turn out. We'd get to meet you face to face at someplace other than a convention. We were going to have a big after party at the bar. Turtle Gal and Brunch and Bullets have already bought dresses, for God's sake. So that tells you hey, here's Rizzo. Here's the champion of Chi-Town. What you doing there, buddy? But, these guys on YouTube have devoted their entire online presence to the love of Bond. And the word that they keep using is gutted. They are fearful for the franchise. And that's another thing I want you guys that are in the chat to kind of chime in on. They feel that the decision to postpone this movie was a mistake that could result in No Time to Die being the lowest grossing Bond film of all time. I mean, some of them are even labeled this movie as a franchise killer. And when I heard this, I just kind of, it's one of those like you smell something you're not supposed to smell. You arch back and you go, what? But here's the reasoning behind their thoughts. And again, I'm not, and again, guys, I don't know. I don't know what's going to happen in November. But here's what some of these people are saying. I mean, this movie has not had an easy road to completion, and a lot of it has played out in the press. For a while, there were doubts that Daniel Craig was even going to come back as Bond. That was a huge, rumor there for a while. He had some of his own comments that had stoked those rumors. We finally got that settled, and I believe it looked like Danny Boyle was going to be writing and directing the movie, and then that whole thing kind of collapsed, and then the release date got moved. Then they brought in Gary Falconawa to redevelop the project, and it looked like it was back on track. And then there was some press that leaked that, about Lashana Lynch being cast, and it looked like the franchise was going woke. Now, I'm not going to get into all that, but the fan community got really stirred up, and it was piled on when it was announced that Phoebe Waller-Bridge was brought in to polish up the script, so people were getting really antsy even after that, after filming started. Apparently I understand that Daniel Craig brought her in because he's a huge fan of her writing, and he wanted her to touch up the script. So then they had this sort of weird kind of non-event where they were live from Jamaica with all the cast, but the event didn't really do anything. We didn't learn a title. There was no footage screen. We didn't have a song. There was just kind of this. It was just kind of this weird. Yep, we're still making a Bond film kind of thing. But it didn't really do anything. But hey, it was a big deal. They obviously spent some bank on it, and it was like, all right, the momentum was starting to build. And then, I mean, folks, you guys can fact check me on this, but I think it was just literally days after this event, Daniel Craig got injured on set, and production had to shut down while he recovered from surgery. And guess what? The release date got moved again. So, as a Bond fan, I was really getting nervous. I mean, I was really starting to feel like this project was doomed, cursed. The only other Bond film I can think of that had this much trouble was From Russia with Love, and that was a long time ago. So it just seemed like none of the press this movie was getting was good, and no matter what they tried to do to kind of reset the narrative, it seemed to be backfiring on them. So anyway, Daniel Craig gets out of the hospital, filming finally gets done, and they release this poster, and I thought that the poster was a bit lame, but at least they did something, But then, oh my gosh, we got this first trailer. And it was like, oh my God, what movie is this? I mean, I clicked on this thing with my heart in my throat, not knowing what I was going to see and not knowing how I was going to feel. Hey, Bruce Haley, welcome to the chat, by the way. And from the opening moments of this trailer, I was like, okay, there was a lot of things that made my concerns slowly start to ease. I mean, they'd returned to the travelogue style of the older Bond films. One of the things I really liked was they'd gotten back to that really rich cinematography of Casino Royale and Quantum of Solace, and even some of the Sean Connery films. And, there's still a couple of things I was concerned about, but I'm telling you guys what, at the moment at the end of that trailer, when the DB5 cuts loose with its machine guns underneath the headlights, I mean, I wanted to stand up and cheer. I mean, this trailer for me did every single thing it was supposed to do. And, then we got some more posters. We got Billie Eilish's song, which, I wasn't crazy about when I first heard it, but it's been growing on me. I mean, at least you can hum it, unlike whatever that thing was from Spectre. So, what do we got this here? Jason Mark, well, they could just jump to the next Bond without any fanfare like all the previous new 007s. I prefer a passing of the torch, some closure, and even a ridiculous coronavirus postponement. So, exactly. I mean, I guess that's what this discussion is about is, I think, my personal opinion, and like Dwayne said, and apparently Jason Barker seems to feel this, is that, postponing this film seems to be the right thing to do. Daniel Craig owns 007. He is, in my opinion, second only Sean. I would agree with that, and that seems to be the general consensus. I mean, for those that have read the novels, he is probably the closest, even, Lord forgive me, even closer to Sean Connery than the actual characters written on the page. So, yeah, I mean, I would prefer to have a really good Bond film regardless, But, getting back to the way it's been promoted, then we had this little 2-minute, featurette that we talked about briefly last week with the director talking about what his vision was for a Bond film, and he said everything that I wanted to hear. I mean, I couldn't agree more with what he was talking about. And then we got this fantastic No Time to Die roundtable with the cast and the director, and they're all being interviewed, and they're all talking about what a great, experience this was, and you've got them all there, and Rami Malek kind of lets the cat out of the bag that he had been talking about what his villain was going to be way before it was ever announced, and the other thing too is, I never thought that Spectre was a terrific Bond film. I didn't think it was terrible, but I would say it's probably my least favorite of the Daniel Craig films. I know I'm not alone in thinking this, and so as I began seeing the trailers and I began hearing the interviews and watching these types of things, it kind of started coming to the public consciousness that this was kind of a passion project for Daniel Craig, that he was aware that Spectre wasn't as successful, wasn't as universally well received as they had hoped it would be. So I think this has been kind of a passion project for him, to make this movie something special, and to make sure that he goes out on a high note. And like Jason Barker says, Sean's number one only because he established the character in such a charismatic way. I agree with that. You can't doubt that either. But Buddy Brown here says that Craig has surpassed Connery in his opinion, and that is huge. But the fact that we're having this conversation proves just how well the marketing's been lately. I mean, all this was gearing up, and everything I wanted to hear was good, and it just like all this momentum was building towards something special, and now it's gone. I feel like we've lost any kind of momentum that we might have had, and these hardcore fans feel like this loss of momentum will cripple the film. And I see where they're coming from. I mean, they're not going to refilm these interviews or new interviews in 6 months. I mean, what's the matter, Riz? I know the movie's been canceled, but there's nothing we can do about it, buddy. Billie Eilish's song is not going to be near as hot in 8 months as it is now. All the marketing materials are going to be redone with all the new release dates on it. I mean, what are they going to do? Are they going to keep running the same trailer for 8 months? If not, then you're going to make new ones that potentially give away key moments of the film. I mean, so their fear is that by the time November rolls around, people will either be burned out or sick of No Time to Die, or they won't even care. Jared Kavner. Oh, do you think Marvel considers coronavirus a postponement for Black Widow? I don't know that. I mean, I don't think Marvel or Disney stops for anything. I think they just push that train out there and let it go. That's a great comment. I don't know. I guess we're just gonna have to wait and see, because this, as far as I know, this is the first movie that's done this. If there's been other films, they've certainly been a smaller scale. Jason Barker thinks this won't be pushed out as far as the initial estimate. Well, I say that, but you got to book theaters. You've got to get slots. I mean, I can imagine the reason we haven't heard back a lot from our contact at the theater was because he's scrambling trying to figure out what they're going to do. So I don't know. I mean, can you imagine what would happen if? Jason Barker said they are postponing Black Widow, so maybe so. Okay, so let's flip this around then, Marvel fans. What would we have done had Endgame been pushed back 8 months? We already were going to wait a year on it. What would have happened if this would have happened a year and a half ago and Endgame would have got delayed? Would that have curtailed our enjoyment of it? But the MCU is not Bond. We've been getting several Marvel films a year building up to this. It's been 5 years since Daniel Craig's last performance as Bond, and I don't know. I'm so torn about this. I mean, plus there's all these ancillary events that the fan community was putting on there. I mean, forgetting our event. I mean, we had to postpone our event because of this, which again, our plan is to reschedule. But there are multiple gatherings scheduled in London where Bond fans from all over the world were going to meet. I think one of them is called Operation Barracuda. They were going to meet up and then go to the premiere. I mean, several of these guys on YouTube have already got plane tickets to London. What are they going to do now? So, this might be a good decision overall. What happens if you anger but what happens, to the core fan base? I mean, if you anger them for something like this, the hardest of the hardcore. These are the folks that are going to see the movie 3 or 4 times in the theater. How do you repair that relationship? This gives the studios much more time to rebrand and market the next era. I would agree with that. Oh, hold on. Jared Kavner says Screen Rant is reporting neither Black Widow nor F9 are getting delayed. Okay, so now we have conflicting reports here. So, however, to go back to Dwayne's original comment from earlier, unlike Disney and unlike Universal, United Artists has everything riding on this film. This Bond is their only franchise that they have, and if a Bond film fails to perform, as Dwayne said, it could shutter the studio. So, and the other thing is, let's face it, the Bond films, for people that don't know, are the most expensive independent films ever made. The Broccoli family makes these films, and then United Artists pays them back and release. I don't know if it's a negative pickup deal or how they do it, but I don't, So, is this a crippling blow to the Bond fan community? Buddy Brown says, Jared Cadner says, good point on the rebranding. Buddy Brown says, I don't think this is going to deter anyone or the hype of Bond's release. So if I'm reading Buddy's comment right, he doesn't think this is going to deter things. But I guess my question is, writing on that comment, do we just stop and we just release all this stuff again, in 8 months? Or I'm sure there's a boardroom of people trying to decide what they're going to do, but it just seems like, I guess my question is, and again, I'm not advocating that they made the wrong call. I agree with Dwayne. With some of your biggest markets not opening their movie theaters, they can't afford to release this thing now and risk it underperforming. But do you run the same risk holding it till November, I guess, is the question. And are people still going to be hyped? How do you get people rehyped without them getting worn out, I guess is the question. Because, apart from that, there's another issue that I think is kind of an elephant in the room that no one really likes to talk about, and I'm almost hesitant to bring it up, but it's a legitimate concern. And here's the issue. Oh, hold on before I get into that. So Jason Barker says, so is the real argument post-production and second unit footage and actor schedules, or is this just about theater release and audience turnout? I think it's about theater release and audience turnout. I really do. I think it's about the fact that, two of the biggest markets in the world, China and Russia, have got their movie theaters shut. And we don't know when. I know they'd already canceled the press over in some of these countries, the press events, because of fears of that. So I think it's strictly about theater count and about people being willing to go to the theater. At least all the articles I have read indicate that seems to be the case. And to go back to Jason and Jared's other comments, as far as rebranding goes, I wouldn't mind a different take on the posters. I have not been a fan of the posters. I think they're a little plain Jane, especially for Daniel Craig's last outing. I prefer the more traditional Bond posters with the sprawling panels of action and the paintings and that kind of thing. So I would much prefer them to go back to that. See here, what's Buddy Brown say? You just slow down the PR, keep it in the public's eye, but not so much in there till they're close to release date. Okay, so what do you say? Maybe all summer long we have like a Bond, like a Bond marathon on TNT. We have some documentaries that are coming out. Jason Barker, I think we'll start to see a massive push for studio streaming channels to offset theaters. I would agree with that, and that's probably where all this is going. And I would say that this movie was never meant to be a Netflix or a streaming release. Those movies, the cost structure is done totally differently. I would say had they known something like this might happen, they might have structured it that way and just released it straight to Netflix or whoever. But there's no way that Netflix is going to pay $1 billion for this film, because that's essentially what this movie has the potential to gross, is $1 billion if it's done right. So, but I said has the potential, and that leads back into this point that I'm kind of hesitant to talk about, but I think it's really something we need to address. The movie is basically done at this point. It was supposed to open in 3.5 weeks. They might still be working on a few musical cues, and if Dwayne's still in the chat, he could probably address how far he thinks they might be along. They might be working on a few musical cues or tweaking the editing of a certain scene or here and there, but for the most part, this movie is finished. So what about the danger of piracy? Movies get pirated all the time. We know this. So by the time November rolls around, will the film have been pirated to the point that it would it would just be as easy to release it now than to keep it under wraps for 8 months. I mean, this is not like a steak. Oh, hey, we bought an extra steak, throw it in the theater, and or throw it in the freezer, and we'll bring it out, when we need it. This movie is done. It's complete. They've probably already started preparing screeners for the press and for other people, and all it takes is for one of those to leak out, and the whole world has access to it. Now, personally would never do that because I like to be unspoiled and I like my movie experience to be of the best quality it can be. So I don't prefer to watch pirated films, but a lot of people do. And so, my question is, yeah. Jared, you're evil, man. Jared said, hope it's not on any of Sony's servers. Yes, you're exactly right, because they're God. How ironic is that? How ironic is that? So, I guess that's my other question. Do you think piracy is a big concern? I mean, there's some movies that claim their box office was hurt by piracy, but if you look at them, they weren't that great of movies to begin with. The one that floats to mind is Wolverine Origins, X-Men Wolverine, and piracy hurt this movie. Well, no, the movie hurt that movie. So, I don't know if piracy is a concern, but it may be a concern. I mean, so again, what do you guys think? Do you think that by the time November rolls around, the things that have been so disseminated across the internet that it's not going to matter? Do you think? And I guess the question is, would the loss of revenue from piracy be the same as not being able to open it in China? See. What did Jared say? If they did a U.S. only release, the piracy would certainly hurt the international market if they pushed it out 6 months for other territories. Well, that's true. Jason Barker says the surprising success of The Mandalorian and viral Baby Yoda has been unprecedented for Disney Plus and streaming in general. I don't think piracy is as much of an issue anymore because of the way viewership is staying loyal to Netflix, Disney, Apple, Amazon. Oh, that's a good point. Oh, and the CGI claws hurt that movie a lot. Yeah, that's true, Jared, in reference to Wolverine. So, yeah, okay, so that's a good point. Again, as I said at the beginning of the chat, the world is a different place than 2009, and maybe piracy is not. Piracy, it's still around, but maybe like Jason Barker says, maybe people are staying loyal to these channels, and the fact that again, no one knew about Baby Yoda, and that's probably The Mandalorian was probably one of the most anticipated things coming of all time. So I don't know. We'll just have to see what happens. But here's the thing. And I'm going to kind of wrap this up because we basically spent 30 minutes talking about me crying in my alcohol because Bond's not going to come out when I want it to. But at the end of the day, I think we all of us that are fans want the same thing. We want a great Bond movie. And, holding this movie for 8 months isn't all of a sudden going to make it bad. It's not like the movie's going to go stale, sitting on a shelf for 8 months. But we also want these great events that the fans were putting on and that we're going to put on, and we're still going to have those things, but they're just going to be different. I mean, it's going to be a different vibe in November than it is now. And honestly, one of the things I'm really jazzed about, monthly channels for content, piracy is still there. Hey, hello there, Wonder Midget, how you doing? But nobody has a 60-foot screen and will not be able to replace the large format experience. I totally agree with that. And honestly, one of the things that I am kind of jazzed about, even though I was disappointed about the release date, was I was really happy that it got moved to November because November has always been a traditional Bond release date. Most of the Bond films have opened in November. I believe this one in the U.S. is going to open the week of Thanksgiving, so there's obviously time to take advantage of that. You've got a 5-day weekend, so they're going to have lots of chances. I have not looked at the release schedule for what movies they might be up against now, but I do think that Bond's going to be the 800-pound gorilla in the room if the movie's promoted better. Try watching IMAX on a sand sun. Hey, what's up, my brother? We're just about to wrap things up here. We went on 30 minutes early because we were scheduled to go on at 7:30. But so that's kind of my thoughts for the night. Is do we think that this might hurt the film, regardless of the fact that I think it was the right call? And as Dwayne said, there's a lot riding on this release. They can't afford to have it underperform. But I guess the question is which is the bigger risk? Releasing it now and having people stay away because they're scared, or releasing it later after the momentum's kind of been lost, and they've had to do a lot of rebranding. Again, I wouldn't mind some different posters. Rizzo's offering his input. I don't speak boxer, but I'm assuming that he's chiming in something very important here. So anyway, so that's kind of my thoughts tonight. Unless you guys have anything else. Do you guys have anything else you want to add? Hey. Jared Kavner agrees with Mr. Jason Barker. Hello there, Wendy Joe Zuki. Wendy Joe, you will be getting a refund if you've paid for your tickets. I said that earlier in the chat. So anyway, with all that being said, we are going to reschedule our event. It will be at the tail end of November. I know, Rizzo, it's terrible, isn't it? It's awful. We will be... Sorry, guys. Buddy Brown says his vote was it was a good choice. It was a good choice. Hey, can you hush? Okay, I'm just about done. Buddy Brown says he thought it was a good choice to postpone. And come here, bud. Come over here. And Jason Barker says he thinks the studios have enough short-term replacements to push out in the theaters. We know that's true. I mean, I would agree with that they've got enough material they can put into theaters to fill the slots. And poor Rizzo is such a Bond fan. Yes, Wonder Midget, he is. And yes, Dwayne, he does speak Wookiee. We should have named him Chewie instead of Rizzo. And okay, the Wonder Midget here kind of aped my response from earlier. She thinks as long as we get a good movie, she can wait for Bond. I'm gonna have to let Chewbacca out. It's getting to be that kind of that time. So anyway, folks, thanks for allowing me to kind of vent and talk and have all this. Again, we are going to reschedule our event. It's going to be the last week of November at some point in time. We will. Hey, Jared Kavner's podcast has a dog co-host too. That's a good thing. We're going to reschedule the event. It'll be the last week. We're still going to do it all up. It's going to be tuxes. It's going to be formal stuff. The good thing is because we have more time to plan, maybe we can make it even more epic than it is now with some better door prizes and whatnot. But stay tuned. Just to reiterate one last time, those of you that have already bought tickets, you will be getting a full refund. We're going to start that process this weekend. And again, we thank you guys for tuning in. Thank you guys for understanding. I mean, this is one of those things that no one could have foreseen and no one could have ever anticipated, and the decision's already been made, so we're just going to deal with it and go on. My biggest concern actually now is content for the next month and a half, because we hadn't planned on having, we had our content page filled, and now all of a sudden we've got to refill it. So anyway, additionally, before I sign off, one last thing. If you guys are liking our videos, if you enjoy our content, please leave a like and share our content when you can. Also, if you're so inclined, hop over to our YouTube page and subscribe to it as well, so that you'll be notified when new content drops there. So with that having been said, this is Geekboy live from the fan cave, thanking everyone for tuning in tonight, signing off.